All right, welcome back to Dr. B Teaches. I hope everyone is doing well out there. So, I just released a couple of shorts and I wanted to talk about them real quick. There's been a lot going on and here on Turtle Island, and I wanted to talk a little bit about upcoming Indigenous Peoples Day and, of course, our President of the United States, Donald Trump, and his recent proclamation. And I have some notes here, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about this proclamation that he put out. And I know a lot of people are saying that he's bringing back Columbus Day. Well, Columbus Day never left. Columbus Day was established first in 1937, I believe. And then on the second Monday of every October, they've been celebrating, or at least honoring him through this federal holiday since 1971. And Columbus Day hasn't gone anywhere since. So I know that back in, I believe, 2021, President Biden had been putting out a proclamation basically honoring Indigenous Peoples Day. And I don't know if he said something about Christopher Columbus and Columbus Day as well. So, of course, things have changed politically, and Trump now is virtue signaling to his base, his crowd, with his anti woke rhetoric. And that's pretty much what this uh, proclamation is all about. And I wanted to share a little bit with you and then just kind of talk about it and share a little bit of the history as well. And then you guys can go check out those shorts that I just put out, and you guys can comment there as well. And of course, if you have any, thoughts or feelings or what have you about Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day, feel free to share in the comment section. Any type of insights, I would appreciate it. So this is his proclamation. And again, it's not an executive order. It's nothing along the lines of a law. There's already a federal holiday in place that honors Christopher Columbus. I mean, there's only a handful of people that have a federal holiday, and Christopher Columbus is one of them. Interesting enough, he actually never set foot on what we call the United States, but that's neither here nor there. There is a day that's been honoring him going all the way back to 1937. But anyway, this is the president's proclamation. And I did see the video of him reading it saying that Columbus Day is back. But like I said, what I've been telling people is that Columbus Day hasn't ever left. It's been a federal holiday uh, for almost 100 years now. I think that a lot of people are just tired of celebrating colonialism and imperialism, and people have moved away from that. People want a more well rounded view of history. At least some people do. Now, I understand that his base doesn't, and that's where this proclamation, I think, is geared towards those individuals. So I'll read the first paragraph and maybe a little bit more. So he says, "Today our nation honors the legendary Christopher Columbus, the original American hero, a giant of Western civilization, one of the most gallant and visionary men ever to walk the face of the earth. This Columbus Day, we honor his life with reverence and gratitude and a pledge to reclaim his extraordinary legacy of faith, courage, perseverance, and virtue from the left wing arsonists." And again, that's what I've been trying to tell people. This proclamation is simply something that is signaling to his base that, hey, we hate the left. We're going to blame them for everything. So he's referring to the left here as left wing arsonists who have sought to destroy his name and dishonor his memory. So, anyway, he calls him an American hero somewhere else in the proclamation. It's not very long, but you can check it out. The White House has posted it. It goes through a lot of history. They do admit that he wasn't aware uh, um, of the fact that North and South America, that Turtle Island even existed, and that he was on his way to Asia, and he just happens to bump into the Americas. But they give him full credit for discovering these lands and bringing Western civilization. So it says, guided by steadfast prayer and unwavering fortitude and resolve, Columbus's journey carried thousands of years of wisdom, philosophy, reason, and culture across the Atlantic into the Americas, paving the way for the ultimate triumph of Western civilization. Less than 3 centuries later, on July 4th, 1776. So he's kind of giving him credit, I guess, with to a certain degree, with the founding of the United States of America. And in a way, I guess he's kind of right when you think about it, because what I always tell people is like, I'm not so concerned about Christopher Columbus, the man, the individual. He was a horrible person. We'll talk here a little bit about some of the things that he was doing. Definitely a terrible person. Not um, uh, a individual with a lot of integrity. Certainly somebody who was psychopathic in his treatment of indigenous peoples. Again, we'll talk about that here in a moment. Not so much concerned about him, it's what he sets in motion after 1492 and the people that come after him. And these individuals are all cut from the same cloth. They're all wealth seekers. They're looking to conquer, they're looking to destroy, they're looking to completely take over these territories. And along with that, you see the doctrine of discovery and all these international laws, all these really horrible racist policies that are meant to destroy indigenous sovereignty. And Charles Foster says another distraction from the protests, etc. Of course, and that's all this is. This is virtue signaling to his base. It's not anything that changes the world in any kind of way whatsoever. I've heard a lot of people say that, oh, he's bringing back Columbus Day. And like I said, what I've been telling people is that Columbus Day never left. So he goes on to write here, as we celebrate, well, he didn't write it. I know damn well Trump didn't write this, but as we celebrate his legacy, we also acknowledge the contributions of countless Italian Americans. So he's throwing them a bone as well. And yeah, anyway, you can check it out for yourself. He released this, I believe, on Friday. And I know there's a lot of content out there about it. So let's see. Charles says, not someone to aspire to in any way. Absolutely not. And that's the thing about, again, Columbus, the person. I don't have, um, it's not about him for me. I have absolutely no respect for people who look to harm others to gain wealth and privilege. And that's basically the kind of person he was. But he sets in motion 500 years, more than 500 years now, of exploitation, land theft, slavery. I mean, he puts all of this into motion. And so um, this is all, again, just Trump preaching to his base and letting them know we're not going to be cool with any of this cancel culture nonsense. It's anti woke virtue signaling, is what I like to call it. And I know that it's upsetting to some people. It's upsetting to a lot of indigenous peoples. But here's the deal: is that there are indigenous peoples celebrations going on all over the country currently this weekend. I know there's a lot of events celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't really know of anybody who celebrates Columbus Day, although it is a federal holiday, as I stated. But there are a lot of people out there who have organized these amazing events, and that's really what we should be focusing on, not so caught up in this political nonsense. Also, we need to keep in mind as well, and this is something I've been talking about for quite a few years, is that just because people are celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily bringing about the type of change that we want to see, the honoring of treaty rights, the protection of sacred sites. All you have to do is look at what's going on at Oak Flat in Arizona right now. You know, Resolution Copper is very close to taking over that land. That is sacred land to the Apache. Where are all the the liberals? Where are these politicians in protecting the sacred place? Because right now they're nowhere to be found. And what I tell people, there's a lot of politicians who will post a land acknowledgement in the morning, and in the afternoon they'll vote for a law that takes away Native American land and resources. And those are just straight facts right there. So there's a lot of virtue signaling on the left as well, co opting of Indigenous Peoples Day, which I find incredibly problematic. So we have to keep that in mind. I don't really just get too caught up in politics any longer. I understand that some people are concerned with the direction of the country, but for Indigenous people, the fact is that the destruction of Indigenous lands, the theft of Indigenous resources has been ongoing since 1492, and it hasn't stopped. It didn't stop with the Barack Obama administration. Didn't stop with the Biden administration. It sure as hell isn't going to stop with Trump, because Trump is hell bent on appeasing his cronies. And basically, we're talking about the multi billionaires, the power elite, people who control the military, people control big business, and of course, big government. And it's all about wealth and power. And that's just the way it's always been. And that's really what people like Columbus symbolize. They symbolize the worst of humanity. These politicians, the power elite, represent the worst of humanity. And these are the things that I feel like we should, be aware of and talk about and dialogue about, because uh, getting caught up in the political theater of proclamations and Trump with his ridiculous signature and his photo ops is really it's a distraction. We shouldn't get caught up in that distraction, because there's a lot of hard work ahead, because there's corporations out there who do not care about tribal sovereignty. Our children's lives are at risk, and there's so much work to be done, and there's so many amazing people out there who are doing that work each and every day. And those are the things that I think about, as opposed to some of this political nonsense, which it's hard not to be concerned. But at the same time, indigenous communities, since the beginning of colonization, have been under duress and have been feeling these really terrible threats. So, with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about this original American hero. That's what Trump describes him in this proclamation. Again, the original American hero, a giant of Western civilization, and anybody who opposes him is a left wing arsonist, a radical. So I guess I would qualify. So let's talk a little bit about Columbus. Like I said, he didn't know where he was, and that's even acknowledged in the proclamation. He was looking for a trade route to Asia. He had three ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. He, after I believe 8 weeks, sees land in the Bahamas, and he doesn't even know that there is this massive land mass territory, the Western Hemisphere, Turtle Island, both North and South America. Thinks he's in Asia, which is kind of hilarious and kind of funny, because he's referred to as the Great Navigator, and he was basically lost. He didn't know where he was at. But within a couple of days of his landing, he writes in his journal about the indigenous peoples that he encounters on these islands, that their military power is weak. And he says, with 50 men, they can all be subjugated and made to do what is required of them. He's basically already scoping out these human beings, these societies, these free societies, as potential slaves. And of course, he also sees that they have gold and silver and resources that are profitable. So he's literally planting the seed of a system of subjugation, a system of slavery, conquest, forced labor, And of course, that leads to mass death and the destruction of indigenous life. And he sets that in motion in 1492. And others like Hernan Cortez and Pizarro, John Smith, whoever arrives here with the intention of stealing indigenous land, he sets this system up and he gets that ball rolling. And that's what indigenous people have been dealing with for over 500 years. And I think that this proclamation right here, honoring this man, is a good indicator that that system is well and alive. And I think that's what we have to be aware of. It's not about what happened over 500 years ago, it's about what was set in motion over 500 years ago and what continues to happen here today in 2025. Also, the proclamation talks a lot about gospel, and I know that one aspect of Christopher Columbus's life that people aren't familiar is that he was a religious fanatic, and a lot of these people who arrive here, they are cut from that same cloth. They are not just intent on bringing with them soldiers; they're also bringing with them the Bible as well. So they have the sword in one hand and the Bible in the other. And so there's this legal, religious policy, the doctrine of discovery. This all is um, coming together in a way that's setting up the massive theft, right? The greatest robbery in human history. And we're talking about the stealing of indigenous land. And with the doctrine of discovery, basically, what these Christians argue is that indigenous people are not real human beings. They debate whether or not they even have a soul, but certainly they don't have any right to own the land, at least according to them in the doctrine of discovery. And that the people who have a right to own the land are the people who discover it. And because the people are living there, they can't discover it, so they don't have a right to the land. Anyway, it's absurd by today's standards in 2025. It's really absurd that this could actually be a law. But what it sets in motion is land theft and the destruction of indigenous sovereignty. And it grants these Christian monarchs the right to claim all non Christian lands. So, in plain English, if you aren't Christian, then your territory is up for grabs. Let's see here. Charles says destruction of these lands is heart wrenching. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And, I want to do a little bit about what was brought here because a lot of people talk about the takeover of the Americas, but really what you're seeing is a clash of cultures that are opposed to one another. One that is rooted in imperialism. Uh, you have people who are traumatized by a lifestyle that isn't all that wonderful in Europe, and these people they're coming out of terror and trauma, and so when these people arrive here, they're encountering a world of abundance, and when you live in a world of abundance and life isn't a vale of tears, you're not apt to go to war and destroy your fellow neighbor. And so, and I'm not trying to say that indigenous people lived in utopian societies because that's absolutely absurd. That's just not the case at all. Did not live in utopian societies, but we lived in societies where there was reciprocity with the land and everything made sense. But when these people come here, nothing makes sense. And the only thing that matters is if you have the power to destroy, you have the power to steal, you have the power to conquer and take. And even that story needs to be reevaluated because this idea that Native Americans that we just threw our hands up and said, hey, take our resources and land, that's nonsense as well. Mike Perry says, stay strong, Dr. B. I'm trying. You do the same. I want all of you guys to do the same. And don't forget to hit the like button, please. Helps the algorithm. Leave a comment as well. If you're watching this, feel free to comment. I do like the feedback. Any kind of feedback that I can get would be really, really good. Um, if you have your own thoughts on this, I'm more than interested in reading them. So stealing something is not discovering, doesn't even make sense logically. It doesn't make sense logically, and that's what's so crazy about the doctrine of discovery is that uh, you are basically saying that Europeans are superior, that Christianity is superior, and that everybody else is beneath you. But if you look at the reconquest of Spain, and if you look at the world that these people are coming out of, you can kind of see how the doctrine of discovery makes sense to them. Because, like I said, these people are literally they're crazy. Now, here's the thing: is that in 2023, the Vatican they formally repudiated the doctrine of discovery. So even now, they say that those concepts were wrong, and they're trying to recognize that indigenous people um, should have some rights. And I'm conflicted here when it comes to an organization like the Catholic Church, especially all the damage that's been done to indigenous people after all this time. Is it meaningful to some degree? I don't know. Um, you know, it's just hard for me. It says if cultures have had some of the same ideas that their race is the only one that is superior, everyone else is essentially trash or there to be used. Very true. Jesus was an Arab Middle Eastern man. He was born in Bethlehem, now is Palestine. Yeah. Want to get too much into that, a little off topic here, but I see your point. There's enough for all of us. Greed has destroyed men's souls. Oh man, 100%. There is enough for everybody. And I think that's what is really sad about the clash of what's happening here in the Americas is that there is a world of abundance and the people who arrive here can't even see it. They're so used to living in a world that has nothing, famine, wars, plague after plague. I mean, when these people arrive here, they're in bad shape. Europeans are in bad shape psychologically, physically, mentally. So it's easy to see why these people have this type of imperialistic mindset because it's the world that they're coming out of. And like I said, when you live in a world of abundance and your neighbor is your friend, when you encounter new people, you're not looking to destroy them. And it's not to say that some indigenous communities were like, oh no, we're not having it. We heard about you all. And they weren't looking to shake hands, they weren't looking to trade, they weren't looking to invite these people into their world, and they drove them out. That did happen as well. So you have the Doctrine of Discovery in 1493. That's a year after Christopher Columbus just bumps into the Bahamas. 2023, the Vatican formally repudiates it. Uh, let's talk a little bit about what happens on the ground after Columbus lands. So the real invasion happens after he returns back to Spain and he brings with him gold that he steals from local indigenous peoples. Also, people that he just kidnaps as well. Columbus actually was sailing along these islands, just randomly kidnapping people and then taking them back to Europe. And so you see the first kidnapping, sex trafficking, MMIW crisis already kicks off right after 1492. So the MMIW crisis goes all the way back to Christopher Columbus. Appreciate your channel, your videos. I wish more people would find you. You know what? I wish more people would find me too. So hit the like button. Here's the thing about me, just so you guys know, I do the best that I can. The work that I do here, but I have a full-time job, and I teach jujitsu. I teach martial arts sometimes in the evening, so I'm pretty busy. I do the best that I can do, and whenever I have a chance to do content like this, I'm really excited because I am pretty busy. Um, but I do appreciate that, Charles. I have been able to do a lot of content recently. I encourage everybody to check out my shorts, and I feel good about some of the work that I've been putting out lately. And I enjoy it. I have fun doing it. I like the engagement as well. The biggest issue is time. I'm not a full-time content creator, uh, and I'm smiling when I say that because I just don't even see myself in that way. uh, just because I don't have the time. I see these creators and they're super consistent, and I'm super inconsistent because I have a full-time job. I do community work as well, and I'm just always busy. Been in a motorcycle club for years as well. Anyway, I got a lot of hobbies, and anybody um, who knows me knows that I'm on the go quite a bit. Says Christianity, one of the worst things to happen to societies more than greed itself, almost. Christianity has been used as a tool for these really horrible people, and this starts with Christopher Columbus. I mean, there is a connection. Christianity, again, the Bible in one hand and the sword in the other. Um, I know Vine Deloria. He writes about how Christians, when they came here, they wanted the land and they wanted to give us the Bible. Now we have the Bible and they have the land. Because there's a lot of people who, through the boarding school system, the boarding school era was awful in terms of its destruction of indigenous spiritual worldviews. And of course, um, there was basically forced conversion. Starts happening immediately. So I want to get back to Columbus and Bartolome de las Casas because he's a friar who documents the early conquest of the Americas. He's an eyewitness and he records these atrocities. And I remember when I first read the book, Devastation of the Indies, I mean, some of the stuff that he writes about is almost unthinkable. The systematic destruction, genocide of indigenous life. Uh, it's incredible. And I know the book was a polemic, and maybe I don't know, possibly he's over exaggerating situations, but there's so much documentation about what these monsters did. So much documentation. So, something to keep in mind that there were people who resisted what happened to Native people. And I know Bartolome de las Casas said this is a crime. This is a crime against humanity. And what we're um, committing against these people are um, crimes that are so horrible. He's actually argues that God will never forgive these people for what they have done to indigenous people. This is De las Casas saying this. And so when people try to tell me, well, they're people of their times, and that's just how it was back then. I'm like, no, stop. Look, you had people who said this is wrong. Stealing is wrong. Killing is wrong. Mass killing. Taking an infant child from its mother and smashing its head in is wrong. I don't care if it's 1492 or if it's 2025. And we see it today with what has taken place in Gaza, how we can dehumanize people to the point to where we can justify the all out assault on human life. It's just unreal. Thank you, Dr. B, for sharing this knowledge. Yeah, they do lie. They most certainly do. Not all, for sure. I believe that the indigenous people need to have their land back, aka Turtle Island. I agree as well. That's one way that we could support indigenous peoples, truly support indigenous peoples. And that's what I challenge, our allies out there. The best way to support is support land back, support the protection of indigenous sacred sites, learn about the local tribal histories as much as you can, and support any type of cultural revitalization programs that they have. It's definitely destroyed many cultures, absolutely. I try to watch your videos and interact. I don't have people to share with, otherwise, I would. I understand. But I do appreciate just all your help and your support with the content. Absolutely. It said 500 years are close. Were taken to Spain. They were taken as slaves. Yep. That's no, that's 100% true. And so I was about ready to get to Columbus's first voyage. Um, he brings the Nina the Pinta and the Santa Maria. When he goes back home, and he takes these little tinkerets with him, and gold and whatever it is that he finds here. That's when the real invasion starts. It's that the second voyage is when I believe there's more than 1,600 men. They bring back their vicious killing dogs, horses. It's about conquest, straight conquest. We're going to take over these lands and territories. And of course, it leads to slavery, the encomienda system, the requirement, which is a document they would read to indigenous people, basically telling them, hey, we're going to take over your lands. If you don't agree with it, too bad, because there's something called the Doctrine of Discovery, and this land now belongs to us. We're planting our flag here. And this stuff just sounds crazy, but it happened. There was resistance. I know the Taino people resisted. Indigenous people just didn't encounter passive communities that just allowed individuals to come in and take their land. They resisted in any way that they could. And there's all kinds of really amazing stories of resistance. I try to share as many of those as I can. And one of the things I always say is that, Native people, tribal communities, whether it's tribal communities on the East Coast, West Coast, North, South America, it doesn't matter. There was resistance to colonization. It was not easy for Europeans to make their way into the interior and to conquer indigenous communities. And the colonization process very slow as a result. In some cases, it's fast. Like if you look at what happened at Tenochtitlan with Hernan Cortez or Pizarro with the Incas, they create a lot of havoc in a short time and slaughter tens of thousands of people. And of course, they have these microbes with them that they bring that also help out as well. So, back to again, back to this invasion, the second voyage. It's really awful, right? And then, of course, as Spain begins to build up this wealth from the theft of indigenous resources, this extraction that takes place, of course, everybody else starts to come here, and they're basically looking for the same. They're looking for the same kind of wealth, and they're looking for land, they're looking for resources. And of course, from then on, it's really a dark period, a very, very dark period. So I encourage you again, just want to keep plugging those shorts, check them out. Please comment and feel free to share them. Like I said, I just did a couple of short YouTube shorts that I put out, and uh, I wanted to do something for Indigenous Peoples Day. I wanted to put some kind of content out for it, and Trump just made it really easy for me with this ridiculous proclamation. I um, didn't have a hard time putting something together. He just, like I said, made it really, really easy. So let's talk a little bit about um, uh, history and the way that history has been taught, a little bit about academia before I check on out of here. There has always been historians who have told a story that's a little bit more well-rounded, obviously. People like Howard Zinn, and people always ask me, well, how can I learn a little bit more? I would say check out Howard Zinn's The People's History of the United States. He starts off the book talking about the arrival of Columbus. And I know that that book has been a bestseller. It's been out for years. He updated it. Howard Zinn is no longer with us, but he was a historian, a great historian. There's also a book called American Holocaust by David Stannard, I believe. David Stannard's book, American Holocaust, is a classic. First came out in 1992, 500 years after Columbus landed. and The Lies My Teacher Told Me by James Lowen. Those are excellent books to check out if you want to read up on this. They're just hard to read because of just how graphic they are. And then you can read some of the original documents. De las Casas, uh, he writes a few books: Tears of the Indians, Devastation of the Indies, or Destruction of the Indies. Those titles are really hard to read. So, with that being said, I appreciate all the support, and I know I might have a few comments here. Really wish you could teach this at schools. I'm thinking about doing a whole series like Indigenous Studies 101 and putting something out here on YouTube for Native American Heritage Month, which here in the United States, that's observed in November. So maybe doing something like that. Um, and yeah, I mean, I enjoy reading this history, even if it's really difficult. And I'm a sociologist, but I love history and I love sharing history. I want to do more content like this because I think it's more accessible. A lot of people are really busy, and here's the deal: it's like I'm an educator. I've been in academia for years, and I have time to sit and read. It's not always easy to do that if you have a full-time job and you're busy. And if I could put some content out there that's going to educate people about the reality of living in a settler colonial society, or even explaining settler colonialism and what that means and what that entails, covering the history, talking about these issues, then I would love to be able to do that for people who don't have the time. And I know people always say, "Well, find the time." Well, the reality is that, man, we're trying to just make it in this crazy world, and not all of us have a lot of time to sit and read. I do, and I, in some cases, have a difficult time fitting in that reading time because of my busy schedule. But this is what I do for a living, and so I'm expected to stay up on issues and to continue to learn, educate myself about history, look at different angles, and so forth. But if I can put out some content, some 5, 10, 15-minute videos, be able to share with people just a perspective on history, or talk about one particular issue, talk about stereotypes of indigenous peoples. I'm working on a video right now talking about indigenous hygiene practices. And one of the things I always heard growing up, one of the things we were often called as dirty Indians, filthy savages. We were always described in these really ugly ways. But indigenous people had hygiene practices that were completely unknown to Europeans. And so I'm working on some content there. And there's just so much that people don't know. History is not supposed to make you feel good. Real history is sad, painful, makes people uncomfortable. You know what? That's well said right there. And I tell my students that. I tell them, like, look, my job is to make you a little uncomfortable here. I'm not here to feed you propaganda. I'm not here to feed you a bunch of nonsense. I'm here to give you a more realistic view of the world, a more well rounded view of the world. And then, as a critical thinker, hopefully you can take that information and be a better human being and go out there and do something with it to make the world a better place. And that's what we need. We need more wisdom as opposed to more people like the individuals who are running the world, the power elite, who do not care about our lives, do not care that people are suffering in the world, or people are homeless, or people can't feed their families, or whatever issues that are going on. The fact that everything is just overpriced and people are just having a difficult time making it in this world. And it's our job, I feel like, if we have gotten to the point to where we're lucky enough to get an education and do something to give back, it's our job to be the best critical thinkers that we can be. And that means looking at history in a critical way. Doesn't mean just being critical or negative, and that's not what I'm talking about. And I don't think that's what you're talking about. And so, yeah, for us in academia, we're trying to get people to use their minds. And in some cases, that's really uncomfortable. So, all right, y'all. Like I said, please leave a comment. Thank you for your comments, by the way. I didn't mean for this live to go this long. I was thinking about just a short one, maybe a 15-minute live. But this is fun, and I enjoy doing this. Pretty easy. I just hook up my camera and go. I appreciate everybody who checks out my channel, supports the work. I do have a Patreon. If you want to become a Patreon, I put content there, a little bit, sometimes a little more controversial. I can say things there I would say here. And you can support the work that I do as well. You can become a Patreon and um, support me through that platform as well. You can find me on TikTok. My handle there is Merciless Savages, and my Instagram, for whatever reason, Instagram always hated me, but my Instagram is doing much better these days, and my content is doing pretty well there. And my handle is Seventh Gen Podcast. All right, y'all. This is Dr. B. I appreciate everybody once again. Don't forget, uh, please hit the like button. Feel free to share those YouTube shorts. Check them out. And there's so much more to talk about here, but I promise I'll do this again another time real soon. All right, y'all. Till later. Peace.